3 a.m. The room is dark, and somewhere in your house, a baby is crying. Not sick, not wet, not hungry. You checked all of that 20 minutes ago. Just crying, with a kind of urgency that feels like a distress signal from a world you cannot enter. Most parents assume they are doing something wrong. But what if the crying is not a failure, yours or theirs? What if it is instead one of the most sophisticated biological processes a human brain will ever perform? What you are about to learn will not just change how you handle tonight. It will change how you understand the entire architecture of the human mind in its most formative, irreversible hours. Here is what most parenting books will tell you. Babies wake up at night because they have small stomachs, because they're cold, because they haven't learned to self-soothe yet. And parts of that are true. Hunger is real, discomfort is real. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look at one detail that nobody talks about. Babies who are fed, warm, dry, and demonstrably full still wake up. Consistently. Across cultures, across centuries. In co-sleeping families and solo crib arrangements. The unmet need theory cannot explain a baby who wakes at the same hour, in a safe and comfortable environment, with no measurable physical deprivation. The need being met at 3 a.m. is simply not the one you can see. Most parents respond to night waking in one of two ways. They go in immediately, every single time, afraid of what ignoring the cry might do to their child long term. Or they hold back, hoping the baby will learn to settle on their own, quietly anxious that responding is somehow teaching dependence. And both reactions come from love. Both make intuitive sense. But both are also built on a framework that treats the crying as the problem to be solved rather than the signal to be read. And once you understand what the signal is actually communicating, the science that has accumulated over the last 30 years reads less like pediatric research and more like the documentation of something ancient and precise. Start with what is physically happening inside that small skull. Newborns spend roughly 50% of their sleep time in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, the phase where the brain operates at near waking intensity, neurons firing in dense coordinated patterns. Researchers publishing a review in Frontiers in Neuroscience in 2022 confirmed that REM sleep in early infancy promotes cortical plasticity, the brain's capacity to form, prune, and reinforce neural connections based on the day's accumulated experience. In concrete terms, the developing brain uses REM sleep as a construction site. And because infant sleep cycles run approximately 45 to 50 minutes compared to 90-minute cycles in adults, babies rotate in and out of this active building phase far more frequently across the night. Each one of those transitions is a potential waking point. Each cry at the boundary of a sleep cycle is not a child who cannot sleep. It is a brain completing one round of construction and preparing to start another. The crying, understood this way, is the sound of neural architecture being assembled in real time. A 2017 review in Current Sleep Medicine reports, drawing on polysomnographic data across multiple institutions, are noted that premature infants spend as much as 80% of their sleep time in active REM sleep, with that proportion declining steadily toward term-equivalent values. The implication is direct. The more developing a brain is, the more REM sleep it requires, and the more frequently its cycles will surface into wakefulness. Night waking is not deviating from development. Night waking is development expressing itself. Now layer in the timing. A 2026 review published in Nature's Pediatric Publications documented something precise. The proportion of REM sleep in infancy is not evenly distributed across development. It is front-loaded, peaking during the window of maximum neural growth. At 3 weeks of age, infants enter sleep through REM 60% of the time. By 6 months, that proportion drops to roughly 20%. The brain is withdrawing scaffolding as the structure becomes capable of supporting itself. Night waking frequency follows nearly the same curve, highest in the earliest weeks, declining as neural architecture stabilizes. Researchers examining infant sleep EEG further found that sleep patterns at 4 months predicted neurodevelopmental outcomes at 18 months, with correlations between REM sleep organization and cognitive markers measured more than a year later. The disruption and the development are not opposing forces. They are the same process, viewed from opposite sides. A study examining infant sleep and stress physiology, drawing on early work from researchers at institutions including the University of Colorado, found that infants whose developmental night wakings were consistently met with calm, responsive caregiving did not show the elevated cortisol markers associated with sleep fragmentation in older children. The physiological cost of disrupted sleep only accrues when the waking is met with absence. It is not the waking that stresses the infant. It is the silence that follows. There is a third dimension, and it is the one that shifts the entire conversation. Researchers studying SIDS risk, including sleep scientists whose findings on infant arousal responses were published in Sleep Medicine in 2002, found that the primary known risk factors for sudden infant death syndrome all share one underlying physiological trait. They suppress infant arousability from sleep. Sleeping on the stomach reduces arousability. Maternal smoking during pregnancy reduces it. Overheating reduces it. Prematurity reduces it. The babies most at risk for SIDS are the babies who do not wake up enough, the babies who cry at night, who pull themselves out of deep, quiet sleep and demand a response, are exercising an arousal mechanism that researchers believe is physiologically protective during the first 6 months of life, before the brain's autonomous breathing regulation reaches full maturity. A paper published in the Canadian Journal of Pediatrics examining healthy infants under sleep laboratory conditions found that safe sleep environments designed to support arousal responses were directly associated with reduced SIDS vulnerability. Your baby waking you at 3 a.m. is not a malfunction in the system. In a measurable biological sense, it may be the system working exactly as designed. And then there is what unfolds between you and the child in those dark, exhausted minutes. Research examining 44 mother-infant pairs, published in the journal Early Human Development in 2012, found that mothers of securely attached infants at 12 months had nighttime interactions that were significantly more consistent, sensitive, and responsive than mothers of insecurely attached infants. The finding was not about how often they responded. Both groups responded to night wakings at comparable rates. The difference lived in quality. Sensitivity at night, genuinely picking up a crying baby, and offering calm physical reassurance was one of the strongest individual predictors of secure attachment at 1 year of age. Dr. James McKenna, whose decades of research at the University of Notre Dame's Mother-Baby Behavioral Sleep Laboratory have shaped international guidelines on infant sleep, has argued that the nighttime environment is not secondary to daytime bonding. For many infants, it is where the relational architecture is decided. 2 people in a dark room, one of them crying, one of them choosing how to respond. That choice is being encoded. Here is what to watch for, and here is why the window matters. Night waking that concerns pediatricians is not frequent waking in the first 6 months. That is expected, developmentally appropriate, and as described above, likely protective. What warrants attention is a baby who cannot be genuinely consoled over extended periods, despite sustained feeding, holding, and calm reassurance. A baby whose cry carries a distinctly higher pitch or a qualitatively different intensity from their usual baseline. A baby who, after a stretch of more settled sleep, suddenly shifts to intensely distressed or prolonged nighttime waking, with no obvious contextual trigger. These patterns, particularly when combined with changes in feeding volume, weight gain, or daytime alertness, can indicate gastrointestinal discomfort, ear infections, neurological differences, or sensory processing concerns that benefit from clinical assessment. Researchers at Nanjing Medical University, publishing findings from a cohort study following more than 3,000 infants from birth through 12 months in 2024, found that persistent sleep disruption tied to underlying unaddressed issues was associated with measurable differences in neurodevelopmental scores at 1 year. The building window is narrow and it does not pause. Trust what you know about this specific child. You have logged more observational hours with this baby than any clinician ever will. If the cry sounds different from everything that came before it, act on that instinct. Beyond the pediatrician visit, keep a simple log for 2 or 3 nights. Time of first waking, how long before settling, whether feeding resolves it or not. That information is more diagnostically useful than any single clinical observation. Your instinct is not anxiety. It is pattern recognition built from thousands of hours of proximity to this specific child. It is data. You were standing in that dark room at 3 a.m., holding a child who seemed, for no visible reason, to be signaling distress into the quiet. Now you know what you were actually holding. A brain mid-construction, wiring itself on a schedule billions of years of evolution has refined and tested. An arousal system calibrated to keep a biologically vulnerable organism present and breathing through the most dangerous developmental window of human life. A child whose cry, at its most fundamental, was a bid for the sensitive, consistent response that will shape the emotional and neural architecture they carry for the rest of their existence. Every generation of parents has stood in the dark and wondered what the crying meant. The answer was always encoded in the biology they didn't yet have the tools to read. If this video changed how you think about your baby's sleep, subscribe. We go this deep every single time. Now, we want to hear from you in the comments. Did your baby's night waking follow a recognizable pattern? Same time, same intensity? And was there a specific age when it shifted noticeably? Tell us what you actually observed.